Happy Mother's Day to all the moms. And we're going to start this morning's lesson with just a little exercise. So you ready? Here's your directions. You each have $1,000. You can write 3 checks. This might be a good chance, moms and dads, to explain to kids how a check is written and what you put where. But you've got $1,000, 3 checks to write. What would you buy? Who did you think of first when you thought about how to spend the money? Did giving money to the Lord figure into your decision? Well, thinking about ourselves when it comes to spending money especially, it's natural. Becoming a giver takes some work. God expects us all to be givers, no matter how old we are or how much money we have. Giving is part of being a good steward. Now, you remember last week we were starting a series of lessons on stewardship. What was the lesson last week? We are stewards of what? Our bodies. God has given us our bodies, and if we have given our hearts and lives to Jesus Christ, our bodies do not belong to ourselves. They belong to God, and we must be good stewards of what He has given us. Do you remember some of the ways? Taking care of ourselves physically, the choices we make. We're to take care of, we're to steward our bodies. Well, today we're going to talk about money. That is something else. God has given us whatever we have. And everything I have is because God has allowed me to have it. And I must be a good steward of it. So, let's look. We're going to turn in Acts. We're going to be talking about the first church. Let's think about one more question. Have you ever saved money so you could give it away? What were the circumstances? Pause and talk about it. One of the problems with this format is, I don't know what you just said, but what I thought of was the fact that our church, Emmanuel, has what we call a benevolent fund, and church members give to it. We have a savings account, and it's there to help when there are people connected to our church in need. We're going to be in the 2nd chapter of Acts this morning, and the people in our Bible account today weren't saving money to buy things. They were actually selling things they had to get money to give away. That's pretty unusual, but these people weren't crazy. They were learning to be good stewards of the money and the things that God gave them. Would you open up your Bibles, pause, and read Acts 2, verses 40 and 41. Leave a marker in Acts 2. We're going to be there for a bit. Acts is the beginning of what is called the church. Peter has just preached to the people in Jerusalem, and now he is issuing his invitation. He's saying, come out from among the corrupt generation that you live in. Come out, come away, be different. What are corrupt people like? Crooked people? You know, nothing really changes. Crooked, corrupt people, they steal other people's property. They envy those who make a lot of money. They ignore the needy. Nothing has really changed among people from way back then till now, because we are all born selfish. We make demands for attention before we're even able to talk. So the people Peter are talking to is nothing special. It's just normal selfish people like the generations that are alive today. The lesson tells us we should talk about wondering, have you ever stolen something? Have you envied someone? Have you ignored a needy person? I think we probably all have. We need God's help to learn to be generous people rather than selfish people. And I think one of the first things that God helps us to do is to notice and recognize those in need. I think when we see need, that's the cue you're supposed to do something. But that change is made possible by God's grace at salvation. What I'd like to do, I'd like to add a question to this, and moms and dads, I want you to really contribute to this. My question is, are there generous people out there that do not have a relationship with God? And the second part of that, can we give, perhaps generously even to others, yet we are still being selfish in our giving? We gave really out of selfish reasons. Is that possible? I think one of the most dangerous thoughts out there in recent years, meaning maybe the last 75, is the humanism, the humanistic look that humans are good and that we can be better. We just need to all work together, that humans can fix things if we just are the best versions of ourselves. What's wrong with that idea? What are they forgetting? I hope you said that we are all sinners. There is no moral world. There's no right and wrong apart from God. And when people as humans try to establish what's right and wrong on their own, number one, it just keeps changing. It's very dangerous, and it's a lot of people listen to it. Even people who would say they are religious and God following, they have a faith in humanity that is misplaced. So yeah, I think there are people out there being extremely generous, thinking they're earning their salvation. And really, that's selfish when we do things not really to do the right thing, but so we look good or we think it gains us something. No, we are saved by grace as sinners, and there is no way to fix ourselves or this world apart from God. So that's the end of my sermon. Let's go back to Acts and look in chapter 2, verse 41. It's the end of Peter's sermon. How many people respond? 3,000. 3,000 people received Jesus Christ as Savior. And when crooked people get saved, their lives are straightened out. They find joy and contentment they never found in being selfish. So the church at Jerusalem baptized thousands of believers in public, giving them the chance to in public, in front of everyone, tell people that their lives are changed. Let's look at Acts 2:42. What did they do after being baptized? They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowshipping, breaking of bread. You'll have to ask Pastor if that means eating together, if that means communion, I don't know. And to prayer. They devoted themselves to the teaching of the apostles. That means they were devoting themselves to learning. I'm so pleased that you all are here in Sunday school, because that means you are devoted to learning. And your parents are with you. As new Christians, they needed to learn. As old Christians, we need to learn. That question I had for Pastor, I'll probably look it up in one of the concordances that I have. That's a reference tool. And if I don't get a good answer, I'll send him a message and ask him. The New Testament has a lot of instructions on how we are to please God with the money He entrusts us with, how we are to be good stewards. If you look in 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, later today maybe, they're particularly helpful in helping us be good stewards. The churches in Macedonia were giving to the church in Jerusalem. That's these people we're reading about in Acts. Can you find Macedonia on the map here? It's way up at the top in the middle. And can you find Jerusalem? It's a red dot all the way down on the bottom right. This early church at Jerusalem, think of that, those 3,000 people getting baptized. They may have lost their jobs because of it, choosing Christ. They may have lost their homes. They may have lost family support, all because they chose to follow Jesus. And that is why, here's what happens in Acts. And it happens when the Macedonian new Christians realize Jerusalem is in worse shape than they are, and they send them money. Let's pause and read Acts 2, verses 46 and 47. What happened to the church members' relationships with one another when they gave? They rejoiced in the Lord, and they praised him. They grew closer together. I'll tell you, when people have given or been generous to you, it really makes a difference. And we are, as Christians, to care for one another. We're to care for our neighbors. We're to care wherever we see a need. And it does draw people together. I also think working together. The people at Emmanuel that I am the closest to are the ones that I have served alongside. And how did these generous church members affect unbelievers who were witnessing this kind of crazy generosity, selling what you have and giving it to those who've completely lost their income because of being new Christians? The people watching, what does it say? It says that the numbers were added to daily. Many unbelievers are responding to God's love as demonstrated by the believers' giving. I never attract someone to Christ on my own merit, but when Christ fills me, it's this little light of mine thing. They're attracted to the light of Christ when I'm practicing it. So here's the thing. You don't need a lot of money to start being a good steward of God's resources. In fact, you don't need any money at all. Stewardship starts in your heart. Give your heart to God, and you'll find that giving to others when you do have money comes naturally. I know I've told the Sunday school kids before that when Mr. Brandt and I got married, we didn't have very much money. We lived paycheck to paycheck for years and years and years. But we purposed early on that we would tithe, give the 10%. And it wasn't a hardship because it was a blessing. We always gave that 10% first, and somehow there was always money to meet what we needed. The year Karen Anna was born was horrible. I was teaching, but I was new to the Herscher district. I didn't have very many sick days, not enough to take maternity leave. And even though the superintendent let me borrow from future years of employment some sick leave, I still was getting docked pay. So pay was being deducted, and our finances were bad. But we continued to tithe, and a family member gave us a little bit of help unexpectedly, and we got through that time. I also know one time when we had $2,000 in the savings account and the car broke, and I forget what the other thing was, but we had 2 emergencies, and each of them were going to cost us $2,000. So we have $4,000 worth of problems and $2,000 worth of savings. The Lord provided. It ended up the $2,000 worth of work on the car. It was a little Toyota, and the wheels literally had fallen off. We'd had it 12 years. But it was still covered by Toyota 100%. So we had the $2,000 to pay the other bill, and Toyota paid the car bill. The Lord will make sure you are taken care of. I also know one time, getting ready to go to Africa, we had some unexpected expenses, and it was discouraging, and I prayed, and someone at church, without even knowing we were having a problem, handed me exactly the amount of money that was needed. They said they just felt led. So the Lord will provide when we're in need, when we truly belong to Him and we are walking in faith and we are giving generously, not out of what we have, sometimes out of what we fear we don't have. I guarantee you, you will never, never, never outgive the Lord. So as we think about being good stewards of our money, I think the perspective to remember is when we belong to Jesus, our bodies belong to Him, our money belongs to Him. It's not ours anyway. And quite honestly, money comes and money goes. It's trust in the Lord that makes a difference. Hey, we should sing that song. One last thought, since it's Mother's Day, and I do say again, Happy Mother's Day. I think this is the key verse for mothers, for parents, for Christians. But in light of Mom, let's think about her as we read this today. Philippians 2, verses 3 and 4. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. I'm not sure anybody does that better than a mom, because you're not a mom out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. But moms, your mom is looking above her own interests and to yours all of the time, every day. Let's thank them for that, can we? Have a blessed week. Be well, everyone.